Have all the acumen ready to go. Where does it begin?
Baseball!
Baseball, Game 7.
When does a job become more than a job?
3 straight pitches, changeup, curveball. There was a look in his eye, and it was special. That, to me, was the series, that inning right there.
How does one go from broadcaster to trailblazer?
And she became the first female analyst in MLB postseason history in 2015. Love it, congratulations.
Jessica Mendoza has been blazing a trail at ESPN for 14 years.
They had their backs against the wall, the wild card game. Do we remember that? It feels like months ago. They were down 3-1 against the Dodgers. This team, when they had to fight, they did.
And during the past 5, her torch has gotten mighty hot.
I'm asking you right now, Game 7, who you got, Jessica? Who you got?
Jessica Mendoza, always good to have you here with us. Can you just share what it's been like to be in the middle of all of this attention?
Game time, Red Sox, Yankees.
Biggest thing you want to do as a hitter, you want to have a little bit of rhythm, right?
Tell me a little bit about growing up and when you got into softball and then really develop a love for the game.
Well, it actually started with baseball because my dad was a baseball coach at a local college. My dad would just bring me on the sideline and I hung out on a bench and learned about chewing tobacco at age 4 on a baseball field. And
I grew up in the gym, so just running around a hardwood instead of the field. Yeah.
Exactly. I was around college athletes and boys, men, and I just knew sports. That's all I ever wanted to do. I idolized my dad, so really I remember being at a young age, like anything I could do to impress him. What was really cool about my dad, though, is even though he coached all men, he had 3 daughters and a son, and I never grew up feeling like, oh, I'm the girl, so I should be doing this. It was like, if you could pick up a ball and throw it, you were gonna play. And we were never treated differently. Softball was the sport really because I had a coach at home, good or bad. I mean, there were times I would have told you it was like the worst thing ever. Looking back, clearly it was amazing to have someone we had batting practice every night. I mean, you had a lifting schedule before you could even eat dinner.
A regiment you were on.
It was a strict schedule of sports, and specifically the technique. And the mechanics as a softball player. I think one of the things that was cool is that because we were always hitting and I had a coach as a father, is that I had a very baseball style swing. And he taught me, and it kind of changed, I think, the way people saw how you could hit, and allowed me to kind of have more power and just an idea of like how you can expand the game as a hitter. Which I think opened up a lot of scholarship opportunities for me in high school. The academics blew me away. And yeah, like I was a nerd kind of. Like I enjoyed the fact that at Stanford you had to get in as a student. I liked that on my trip they took me to class, which on no other recruiting trip did they do that. They were like, hey,
Stanford
they're like, no, we actually go to class here, and that I actually liked that. Because I knew I hate saying this, but especially then, I'm a female athlete. Like, who am I kidding? If I go to a school based on sports, like I want to go somewhere where school is important, and then when I take this degree, I have a life after sport because that was always really important to me.
The Stanford career, All-American all 4 years, and then beyond that, and just all kinds of records. What were kind of the highs at Stanford, and then how did those compare to competing for the USA in the Olympics?
I'd say my high for sure was my junior year. We went to the Women's College World Series, ended up finishing 3rd in the country. And so for a team that had never even been to the postseason, to go that far, to be on television, to be on ESPN. Like, I remember the first time even someone asked me for my autograph, and I turned around, I was like, who are they talking to? And they were like yelling my name. I kept turning around, I'm like, what? I mean, like, it just never occurred to me that, like, as a female athlete, people could see you on television, that, young girls could look up to you. It really switched my mindset in women's sports and where it could take you.
Post-Stanford, Olympics, and what Athens and Beijing were like for you?
Well, I mean, there's a passion you have for the sport you play and the hours that you put in for that. And I think at any tournament level, competition level. There's the drive that you have and the love that you have for your sport. But with the Olympics, I didn't realize until I got there, really, was 10,000 athletes representing more countries than even the United Nations. And you're all in one village together. You're all in one giant dining hall together, which, if talk about my favorite place to be, not just because I like to eat, but because to me, like, to be in Athens, the original place of the Olympic Games, and walk around a giant room and be able to sit with athletes from all over the world. And as much as I loved my teammates when we'd lived together for a year, I would ditch them every meal. And I remember in 2004, we had just recently declared war on Iraq. I went and sat with the Iraqi soccer team one meal. And I remember most of them didn't speak English, and so I had an Egyptian high jumper come over and help translate so we could have this like meal. I wouldn't have been able to fly to Iraq and have these same conversations at that time. And I know that sounds super political, but to me, like, that's what makes the Olympics so great. And then you take the passion that you have for the sport that you play, and now you have USA across your chest. And it just was something that I didn't expect that much emotion to come with the patriotism, along with like the love for the game. It literally rocked me when we won gold and I heard our national anthem. Forget softball, like, you know, I've got this country across my chest, and now this is our flag, and you hear the song that we've heard so many times, and yet it had a meaning that it really cut to my core. And to me, nothing compares. There's no sporting event that compares to the Olympic Games.
How did your experience in Athens compare to Beijing? Was it similar, or was
No, it was awful. We lost in Beijing.
I know, it was a silver.
This is the competitiveness of me.
I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't want to eat
horrible.
with anyone.
Gold or nothing. No. It is.
You're not first, you're last.
Totally.
Ricky Bobby all the way.
No, it is sad because, I mean, Athens, of course, it had the historic Acropolis, Parthenon, like, I mean, again, the nerd in me came out, like, history. I mean, there was nothing that could compare, I think, to going back to where the original Olympic Games took place. I think from just an overall first time in the Olympic Games, you win, second time in the Olympic Games, we lost that gold medal game. And it wasn't even just that we lost, but softball had been taken out of the Olympics. So this was the last time in our minds that softball was ever going to be in the Olympic Games, and then we lose. So I mean, it was like a gut blow. Like, I wanted to, like, it was just an awful feeling. We were on the cover of Sports Illustrated after Athens, you know? I literally had the gold medal around my neck to the point where it was like rubbing me on my neck like rocks. I just wouldn't take it off.
Where does broadcasting come into the picture, and how did you get into that?
What led me to broadcasting was actually I was getting interviewed, and it was an ESPN interview, and they, you know, were just talking to me about the game and whatever, and I just had a lot of energy, and they were like, you know, you have this enthusiasm and this passion, like, have you ever thought about being on air? And I laughed, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, put a camera, a mic on me, like, no filter, I'll get fired first day. There's no way, you know? That next year, they reached out and they were like, look, we just went from like 20 softball games, college softball games a year, to like 200. We're looking for analysts. We'd love for you to come audition. And I was like, I have no background, you know, no idea what I'm doing. My reaction was for sure no, because I'm like, you know, I would fail at this. But I was surrounded by some awesome people that were like, Jess, all right, if you already think you're gonna fail, why not go, and let's say you go and you're awful and you think everything you already think right now. It's an audition.
Still a good story.
Yeah, and the upside, like the flip side of that is, what if it is something you can do, and it'd be a pretty killer job, you know? So I flew out to ESPN, auditioned, was crazy nervous, and then after that they offered me the lead analyst role and to do the Women's College World Series, and off we went.
No one in baseball right now is hitting the ball more consistently hard, 94 miles an hour exit velocity off the bat than Devers.
What I learned, one of the things I loved the most about playing was the pressure, especially when you learn how to like handle that. And there's nothing like the pressure of a red light going on and 3, 2, 1, and you're live.
As far as the adrenaline goes, as being an athlete in that pressure situation and the red light coming on, how would you compare those two? Like, do you is it a similar rush that you have or adrenaline spike, or would you say they're completely different?
No, it's so similar.
Yeah.
Like I never realized that, to be honest, that's why 14 years later, I'm still like, this is awesome. Because for me, I realize I need that in my life. Like I need that adrenaline, I need that risk, that like, I don't know what's going to happen right now, but we're going all in. There's some sick part of me that craves high pressure situations, especially ones that you know that you can fall flat on your face. But there's something when you don't. The rush of that is pretty cool.
It's Justin Verlander. It is Max Scherzer before Steven Strasburg's name is even mentioned.
There was this idea of just being the best version of yourself. So it wasn't even that I was competitive so much. I mean, I wanted to win, yes. But it was like, if I knew I showed up to a game and I wasn't at my best, if I struck out and I knew I could have given more in the weight room or in batting practice or whatever it was, staying after practice, that would eat at me. So it was this inner competitiveness that I still have today, where it's like, I can't handle showing up to be on air and feeling like, okay, you know what? I didn't actually read all of the notes, or I didn't do all the, it just eats at you. You want to be the best. And it doesn't mean that I have to like look at 100 people in the room and say I'm better than every single one of you. I need to look in the mirror and know that I'm better, I'm the best version of this.
Obviously things go well at ESPN, and then tell us how Sunday night baseball, and I mean, you're in the biggest games, traveling all over with the game of the week on Sunday night, and sitting in the booth with really famous ball players and broadcasters, and what that experience was like and how it came about.
Fast. It came quick only because of, this is where luck, I think, and chance, and I don't know what exactly, it's crazy how sometimes you just have to be not only in the right spot, but choose to be in the spot where you may not have the experience yet and you might not even be ready. And that's what happened is I was doing Major League Baseball on a smaller level. I was reporting, I was doing features, I was doing like hitting stuff for SportsCenter. But I basically had a boss that was like, look, if we put you in the booth, like you're still doing the same breakdowns, but if we put you in the booth, you know, it's gonna be a different reception. Like people are gonna have a strong reaction to the geographical change of you going from the field like 100 yards to the booth. Just because there aren't many that are there, many women. And so he had an idea of putting me on a ESPN2 kind of random Monday night game, and was like, let's do this for the first time, you know? And I had 2 months to prep. It was awesome. I went and, I mean, this is the nerd in me came out, saw these teams, met with these teams. I went and did this game that no one really saw on a Monday. By Wednesday, Kurt Schilling, who had been on our Sunday Night Baseball telecast, had gotten in trouble and was suspended for that Sunday game. By Thursday, I get a call from my boss and was like, hey, how would you like to fill in for him on Sunday night? And I was like, dude, I just did my first game like 3 days ago. Who's playing on Sunday? Like, and was I ready? No. Like, was I, you know, to be on that stage, to be, but did I, you know, prep and get ready and do everything I could? But kind of like being asked to audition way back when, being asked to go on Sunday Night Baseball, my first reaction was like, Jess, you're not necessarily ready for this. But those are the things that I just feel like the coolest things. You might not always have all your ducks lined up in the row. You might not have the 2 months to prepare. You might not feel like, okay, now I'm ready. I don't think timing always works out like that. Sometimes you have to jump into things that you don't even know what you're jumping into, but you're gonna figure out when you land. I definitely could have epically failed on that first Sunday night.
It was announced you inked a new deal with ESPN, a new contract, and kind of what's on the horizon and in the future, what's exciting coming up.
One of the biggest things I'm excited about is Tokyo. I'm not gonna be doing Sunday Night Baseball anymore, which is, I am sad about that. Just because it's like family. I was probably around them more than my family during the season, just because that's every Sunday for 27 straight Sundays. So I will miss them, but it opens up my life now to be able to do other things. And one of the biggest things is being able to go to Tokyo for a month and cover the games. And be able to see softball back in the Olympics. So now having the freedom to take my family, be able to cover those games is going to be pretty cool.
Let's talk a little baseball, though, with the season.
Yeah. There's nothing to talk about.
Yeah, it's a quiet off season, huh? Just
pretty mellow.
Who do you like to win? This, yeah. What do you make of all this? And I mean, what are you expecting as we gear up for spring training and games getting going here real quick?
It'll be nice to see baseball because I think that's what we need to get back to. It's just a rabbit hole right now. Every day, like another person or another interview happens or some new accusation or, and then it's boom, like everything's blowing up again. And the players right now are, it's crazy. They're just coming at each other. It brings out an ugliness to the game, and the game's a beautiful game. It really is. And I think once we get to opening day and we see that again, of course, it's still going to be a topic of conversation. All eyes are going to be on the Astros, especially early in the season. Their numbers, retaliation, all of that, is going to be a big, question, especially the first month or two. But when I kind of flip that and look at the other side and just like, okay, what are we looking at? I mean, Mookie Betts and David Price just went to the Dodgers. Like, I'm really excited to see a team that's won how many games the last 4 years, have been to 2 World Series, to see, kind of who the new king of baseball, who that new big team is. And, I look to LA right now as a team that's really exciting to watch. We just need to get to where baseball, the number one storyline isn't cheating. The number one storyline isn't, it will always be there, and it's gonna be something that's gonna follow, like I said, for decades.
It'll be part of the history.
This is a moment of crisis. And so I'm looking to Rob Manfred to see what type of commissioner he really is. And I think we'll find out, especially in these next few months, as this crisis continues, as to the decisions and what he continues to make statements on.
What brought you to Bend, and how'd you end up here?
My sister moved here about 15 years ago. She met a local, which I'm learning is like a unicorn to meet someone that's actually from Bend. And so we've been coming up for over a decade, spending the summers here and the winters. My kids have always loved it here, and we've probably been talking for about 10 years. I think like a lot of people when they come visit, how do we move here? How do we get here? And with my job, it was a little complicated with just the idea of moving somewhere a little more remote when in my job, I basically travel all around the country. But it was something that we fell in love with this place, and we wanted to make the jump, and we did.
Everything I read about you, like the word that comes up is trailblazer. Being the first woman in the Sunday night booth and doing all these things and being labeled a trailblazer for women, what comes along with that title, and how do you feel about that?
I don't think about so much the title as much as the responsibility. I definitely don't walk around and think of myself as anything beyond what I'm doing in my work, because to me, it's not so much important that I did it once, but that I stay and that I'm able to continue to do it well.
Excited for tonight?
Game 7, are you kidding me? Come on, this is what the sport needs, it's what you want.
The amount of men that have come up to me that said, I didn't think you belonged here. I did not want a woman's voice in this sport, and I had a really bad reaction to you. But then I watched a game with my daughter, and I saw her, and then I actually listened to you, and I realized that you do belong here, and that this is something that's huge for our sport, to not just reach a lot more men, but to actually reach everyone who might want to watch a baseball game, but maybe their voice was never heard.
Well, I think it's very cool, and I think it's cool how you just articulated it with men too, because I think everyone first thinks, I've got daughters, I want them to see Jessica Mendoza, but it does make you take inventory of your own thoughts, beliefs, watching sports.
Well, and I have 2 boys, and I think about how I even got to this position. It was all men hiring me. It was men seeing and understanding, and as much as, you want equality and you want women to be in the same seats as men, I think we have to all kind of do this together. I'm not just here to impact girls, but I want men to see this, boys to see this, and understand what a strong woman looks like, and honestly, just what someone that's doing their job right looks like.
with the kind of, and you even touched on it with some guys coming up saying, I had this reaction, I didn't want you there, or saying that the negative reaction and all the negative blowback on things, which unfortunately, I guess, comes along with blazing trails. How do you deal with that? Because most people don't have to deal with that type of thing in their everyday work. You know, you're doing an Excel sheet, people don't get up in arms. Come on, what the, you know, like I don't.
Use all caps today.
Yeah,
I hate this. Go home.
Yeah, and you know, all this online world that we deal with. But how do you personally deal with that and not let that noise just beat you down?
I mean, it does. I mean, to sit here and say it doesn't affect you, I mean, I guess everyone's different. It still does. I've handled it and learned, I think, with everything that comes my way, I learn a different path to dealing with it. I mean, it's interesting because I was actually just speaking at Mountain View High School, and all last week I spoke to all of their freshmen on 3 different days, and I remember being a freshman and thinking that when I look back that high school years, right? We all look back and that's like one of the most difficult times in figuring out who you are and what people say about you and what defines you, all those things, right? And I thought as I got into my 30s that like, okay, that was the difficult part. And I didn't realize until these last 5 years that I am tested with that all over again, of who am I? Who do I listen to? What voices do matter? And it's interesting because I was looking at this like parallel universe between me and these freshmen. They're talking about, you know, just the pressures they face with social media and what people put out there. And in their small worlds, which are just as important, they're dealing with all kinds of the same issues. Just, you know, it's a little bit smaller scale.
Right.
When does a job become more than a job? How does one go from broadcaster to trailblazer? When they stand the test of time. When they get knocked down, but refuse to stay down. And when they face the noise, the criticism, and the hate, and decide to continue anyway.
I'm really looking forward to kind of just growing myself within this space that I have in this huge company and seeing like, okay, what is next?